We'll be starting very soon. Just hang out, and in just a few minutes we'll be beginning. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Hi. Hello.
Told them that they could come, and some people brought their partners, and they didn't pay for a ticket.
Okay, it's supposed to be $5, but I'm not gonna. I don't have time to worry about it. So, yeah. If they can't afford that, whatever. Okay.
Where are you?
One of my friends already reviewed my
Guys ready? You ready? Okay. We'll be starting momentarily.
Harry, let me wait. Hi, honey.
I'm gonna give this to you now because she'll call on me.
Okay, do I have to hit anything, or
No,
is
it's
it
on.
okay?
It's been on. Just throw it there.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fine Arts Work Center, and happy Carnival Week, you guys, at end of summer. Oh my gosh, this is a very bittersweet night as we're coming to the end of our public programming here at the Fine Arts Work Center. For those of you who are new to us, my name is Sharon Poley, and I am the Executive Director here. Thank you, Gail, that's so kind. The Fine Arts Work Center is dedicated to supporting artistic freedom, nurturing creative connections, and making possible artistic achievements that are important to the larger culture. And here we present free public programming like artist talks, panel discussions, readings all year round. So please, if this is your first time, how many of you are first time here to the Fine Arts Work Center? Look, you know, I was gonna come up here and say, you all know me, and then I realized you all don't. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And please do check out our events calendar and come back many times in the future. So here at the Fine Arts Work Center, we have a saying, which is, it's a good night when Michael Cunningham is here. We are thrilled to welcome our trustee and dear friend, Michael Cunningham. I know, let's give him together in conversation with writer Ben Shattuck. Big whoop for that. And of course, we are thrilled to host this event in partnership with East End Books, our beloved So Jeff will come up momentarily to officially introduce all of our guests, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our supporters here in the room, starting with our Board of Trustees and our Board President, Lynn Kortenhouse. Together with other trustees here tonight, poet Marie Howe. Hi Marie, we're so happy you're here. And Bruce Stanzer, our beloved architect who has developed this beautiful space for us. tonight's conversation, our guests have generously offered to answer audience questions, so please keep your good questions coming. And with that, I'll bring Jeff Peters up to the stage in order to formally introduce tonight's guests.
Well, it's a thrill to be here at the Fine Arts Work Center. I think this is our third year, Sharon, of our partnership. And it's very exciting to have this partnership. The little bookstore in here is open year-round, and off-season it's open, well, this is a lot of the time, and whenever there's a special event, like in the fall, there'll be events coming up, and you can go in there. And then what's great about this, too, is if nobody's here, there's a little brochures over there to tell you how you can take the book you want, and just on the honor system, go onto the website and put a little code in there so that we know you've bought it there, so that's available. So there's a lot of things coming up, and you'll see on the Fine Arts Work Center's site, you'll see the events that are going on there and our events that are going on. I do want to mention that a lot of you know the poet Major Jackson. He, of course, is appearing, I think that's September 6th and 7th, and his wife, who I adore, Dee Dee Jackson, has a new book out, and we will have an event on the 7th with her at the East End Books location, along with Elizabeth Bradfield. So that's on our website, and that's coming up. So quickly, a couple of things that are coming up, just to make a note of. Tomorrow night, if you're around at the WMR, and in partnership with WMR, the Davis Space, we have Belinda Rathbone in the Company of Art in conversation with Ike Williams, The Shores of Bohemia. So if you're able to attend that, we'll see you there. And then you'll see everything else on there. I did want to mention to you that coming in from France on the 27th, we have Samuel Lopez Barantes with the Requisitions in conversation with somebody I love, Sophie Yingling from Surius Pizza, who's also, of course, a wonderful florist. And that information is on the website. You can see that all there. The only other item I mentioned, if you're in Boston, on 9/5, the 5th of September, we have Dawn Tripp with a fantastic new Jackie book, the historical fiction in its third printing already, in conversation with Will Schlaby. We Should Not Be Friends. It will be a reception, free reception with Woodsville Pier 4 Restaurant. So those things are coming up. We thank you very much for your support and help. So it's really a big thrill to introduce these two amazing writers, two people I really care a whole lot about. Michael Cunningham, of course, is a novelist, screenwriter, and educator. His novel, The Hours, received the PEN/Faulkner Award and the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1999. It was also made into an incredible opera by the Metropolitan Opera, which I got to see, and maybe some others saw that. He's taught at Columbia University and Brooklyn College, and he's currently a professor at Yale University. I want to mention, if you haven't seen the beautiful new, it's been out about 2 years now, edition of The Hours and Mrs. Dalloway, the flip side of Mrs. Dalloway. It's in back. Take a look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. We've got extra copies of that book here. Now, Ben Shattuck is the author of 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau, which we have in the back, which was a New Yorker Best Book of 2022, a Wall Street Journal Best Book of Spring, a New York Times Best Book of Summer, a New England Indie Bestseller, and was nominated for the Massachusetts Book Award. He's a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and winner of the I can't read my own writing, Penn Robert Dow Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers and a Pushcart Prize. He lives with his wife and daughter on the coast of Massachusetts, where he owns and runs the oldest general store in America, built in 1793. He's also the director and founder of the Cunningham Island Writers Residencies. And should mention as well, if you've read the book or his phenomenal short story collection, the first story collection is being made into a movie starring Paul Mescal. So that's pretty exciting news. So very briefly, The History of Sound, a stunning collection of interconnected stories set mostly in New England, exploring how the past is often misunderstood and how history, family, heartache, and desire can echo over centuries in 12 luminous stories set across 3 centuries. The History of Sound examines the unexpected ways the past returns to us and how love and loss are entwined and transformed over generations. Day, and I'm just going to quote somebody that we all know and love and who's amazing, Tony Kushner, who said, along with George Eliot, Michael Cunningham belongs to that rare group of novelists who hold the world close with apparently infinite respect, compassion, and tenderness, all while describing the world and its inhabitants unsparingly. Day is a portrait of the life of a family preceding, during, and immediately after the pandemic, rendered in fragments almost as if assembling forensic evidence, not of a crime, but of quiet tragedies and quiet, heroic endurance. There's deep recognition here, bordering on revelation. So without further ado, and I should mention, that was a good reminder to please silence your phones. And we're just very excited to be here, and 50% of everything, all the proceeds tonight go to the Fine Arts Work Center, so we thank you for coming and supporting them. And if you want to give additional donations, we have information in the back for that. Thank you.
Are we on? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Glass trembling at that. Well, I'm so thrilled to be up here with you. A huge fan of your book. And I'm just so... I think a lot of you know how much it means to come back here and get to read to you. Yeah. You're at what I consider to be sort of one of the centers of the civilized universe. Thank you for coming. We kind of thought we would each read briefly, and then just kind of, talk a little about, variously compromising and embarrassing subjects. And then I'd love to talk to, I think we'd all both love to talk to you all. Do you want to read a bit, or?
Sure, I'll
Go.
read a bit. Yeah,
Go, yeah.
Should I go up there, Jeff? What would you like?
Whichever you prefer.
I
Well,
think so, because
Yeah.
I can't hold a book and turn the page and, what is that?
you can come back down there for the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, there's a note up here that says, remind audience to turn off cell phones. Funny. Does anybody know what mic stands under? Yes, let's see. Yes, thank you so much. Is that's supposed to go?
I'd never be able to figure it out.
Okay. Well, if my fumbling the mic didn't show it, I am quite nervous to be up here on stage with Michael Cunningham. I feel like I'm here on stage with Chopin, and I'm on like book 1 at Suzuki. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Thanks to Jeff for putting this together. I think the last event I did here was with Julie Glass, and that was so lovely. I don't have as deep of a community as Michael or some of my friends here in Provincetown have, but I can see why people come back and hold these profound connections over many, many years. I love the vibes. I thought I'd just read for 8 minutes. I'm on a book tour right now. Earlier this week I was in New Hampshire, 2 nights ago I was in New York, and now I'm here. So I'm glad I can even read the page. This story is called Graft, and I'll just read the first 8 minutes. In the Harvard Peabody Museum, on a warm and stormy afternoon in May 1893, Hope stood at a display case near the very center of the gallery. She was staring at a boy on the other side of the display case who was looking at the flowers in front of him. There was a water lily beside a poppy, beside a cornflower, a common enough plant made rare by the fact, against close observation, that, like the dozens of other flowers in this exhibit, it was made of glass. She folded and unfolded the pamphlet she'd gotten at the entrance. the Blashka models of glass plants, it read on the front, and inside detailed how the flowers had been crafted over the small flame of a paraffin lamp, how long it took Leopold and Rudolph, the father and son jewelers from Bohemia, to build each petal and stem and root and thorn out of nothing but melted stone over wire touched up with a little paint. The boy was identical to Sam, her former husband whom she hadn't seen in over a decade. The same black eyebrows over pale blue eyes, the same round face, the same protruding ears. It was the same face beyond what she could describe in terms of a nose or complexion or shape or forehead. It was just Sam as a child. The boy touched the display case with both hands as visitors were told not to do. The buttons of his coat tapped the glass as he leaned forward, bringing his face right over the glass, looking closer at the poppy and then the cornflower. Hope folded and unfolded the pamphlet again. He was probably just another blue-eyed, dark-haired boy in Cambridge, at most maybe a distant relative of Sam's. There was also the remote and frightening possibility, but reasonable because of this near-perfect resemblance, that this boy was, in fact, Sam's son from his other marriage. The opening of the glass flower exhibit had attracted people from across the state, she read in the paper. Maybe Sam had come with his other family on the train, all the way from Pittsfield. Maybe he was somewhere in the museum right now. And finally, there was this third possibility, the one that had shocked Hope into stillness at the side of the display case. That she was standing across from Eli, her son, whom she hadn't seen since he was a baby, 12 years earlier, when she'd left him with her brother and sister-in-law on Cape Cod. She looked over her shoulder, turned, afraid to see Sam in the room, even more afraid to see Davis and Annabelle. But she only saw her husband, Harold, still reading the exhibition descriptions on the far wall, and an elderly couple, arm in arm, standing in front of the orchids. Maybe the boy's parents were in the next room. Hope would see them and see that they were not Sam and his wife, or Davis and Annabelle, and that would settle the matter. She heard Harold's footsteps behind her. "Can you believe these?" he said, touching her elbow. "How is it possible these are made of glass?" She nodded. "I know," she said. The boy looked up at Harold and then at her. The resemblance to Sam struck deeper now that he faced her. She smiled and said nothing. When Eli was a baby, there was something about him that looked like her own father, nothing like Sam. The boy withdrew his hands from the glass, turned away from the display case, and moved to the next room, towards the Hall of Birds. Maybe it was best to leave the museum now, Hope thought. The boy's hands had left thin, oily streaks on the glass. Under the streaks was the water lily. The roots were coated in fine gray hairs. The father or son glassmaker had crafted the roots with as much attention as he had to the blossoming white flower and its cupped yellow organs, which were together beautiful enough to be a piece of jewelry as they were snapped from the stem. Harold touched her shoulder. "Ready to go?" he said. Years earlier, Harold had been her art teacher at Wellesley. He had proposed to her the day after she graduated. They now lived in a modest house Harold had bought with his savings. She had a studio. She had a garden. They spent summers in Gloucester. He was a good man. That's what everybody who met him said. He was an agreeable, sweet man, if not particularly handsome or conversational. The past years had been pleasant. No disruptions or excitement in their union, which she took only as good fortune. She hadn't told Harold about Eli, or about Sam, or her years in Western Massachusetts where she'd met Sam, or even that she had a brother. As far as Harold knew, both her parents were deceased, and she never wanted to go back to her family home in Barnstable ever again. That was all true, if incomplete. She never imagined the time would come when it would be necessary to say anything more than that. If she had told him about her past, she was sure he would have rescinded his proposal. By keeping the truth from him, she was protecting Harold from his own bad judgment. He was happy with her. Let's keep looking, Hope said, watching the boy turn the corner out of view. It couldn't be Eli, she thought. She would know, some instinct would tell her that he was her son. It's your day, Harold said. As she walked out of the glass flower exhibit, she paused at a pea shoot fixed to the wall. A semi-translucent tendril, pale buds. This one had been made by the father, Leopold. All she could think, from one flower to the next, was what Harold had said. These couldn't be made of glass. But maybe that was the trick. That Leopold had discovered some material characteristic of plants, that stems and flowers were akin to glass, best described in glass, shared a property of glass. Like, as Harold first told her in class, oil paint had been invented to look like human skin. She let a reasonable amount of time pass before she turned away from the peas and followed the boy into the Hall of Birds, where, when she saw his parents, she would know it wasn't Eli, and she could leave. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm reading from the laptop. Does it sound okay? Yeah. Thank you for checking. Great. Now. There we go. My question is, am I going to spill this all? This is from somewhere around the middle of my new, no longer that new, my most recent call of the day, and I'm not going to explain anything about it. Here it is. Iceland, April 5th, 2020. It's all grass here. There's this seamless green carpet that runs uninterrupted to the tops of the escarpments and into their gorges and crevasses, as if some god of the north had waved a titanic hand and just said, green. It all feels like it was summoned, heaved up out of the sea like other islands, but unlike other islands, still in possession of its underwater quality. Still all watery silence, still extended out into what look like limitless depths. It would not be surprising, not entirely surprising, to see a whale fitting by out there, only slightly paler green than the grass, drifting across a valley. Now, there are, according to the book Wolf and I bought in Reykjavik, some flowers still to come later in the season, with names like lupin and sheep sorrel and Arctic thyme. But now it's grass and moss and a hardy small white flower called the mountain aphens. Just a circle of white petals. They look like those dancing flowers in the old cartoons that scared us when we were kids. Now, the guidebook says, I quote, in Icelandic folklore, the flower is allegedly imbued with the power to attract wealth. But first, You must steal money from an impoverished widow while she is attending church, and then bury the spoils underneath a spot where the flower grows. The legend goes that your ill-gotten gains will then double. Needless to say, we really love this book. There's a fox skull, very clean and white, nailed to the wall over the bed, which, as I hope you remember, is where Aunt Zara hung her crucifix. Now, it fascinated me when I was a kid, this tiny wooden man, mostly naked with his arms spread up there on Aunt Zara's wall. And Aunt Zara's Christ was one of the hunky ones with abs and shoulders, as opposed to the gaunt skeletal ones. Zara was the most Catholic person in our family, but she liked her Salems and her vodka stingers along with her hunky, hot Christ, and she believed in expensive shoes. Sometimes I think of this place as heaven, but then I realized how disappointed Aunt Zara would be if she floated off the face of the earth and ended up here, where there are, of course, no shops or hairdressers or churches. I hope she's in her own heaven, which is probably, more like a Catholic version of Palm Springs. Though that, I admit, is a little hard to imagine. Wolf was here earlier, but he's gone now. I think he said he was going for a hike. He's quiet and quixotic. Points for using quixotic in a sentence. He doesn't exactly live in time. I don't mind that he's imaginary, but I lose track sometimes of the fact that he is. I have to tell you something. I have to try to tell you something. The sky here sings sometimes. You gotta listen for it. It's not a joyful voice, not exactly joyful. Remember when we were teenagers, that joke we had about how we didn't really want to go to heaven if it meant wearing a white robe and flying around a chalice all the time. I mean, spending eternity in the city on fire seemed a lot more interesting. But anyway, the sky, when it sings, is more like a Gregorian chant than anything else, though that's not exactly right. It's some sort of musical rumble. It's deep, and I want to say sonorous, but that's not quite right either. It's reverent in its way, but not supplicant. It's sort of like God singing to herself. And the nights are amazing. They're completely silent and dark, or anyway, the earth is dark, but the sky blazes away with satellites and galaxies and spaceships, not to mention some winged animals that are like bats, but they're not bats. It's hard to say what they are. They could be flying rabbits, but they're not rabbits. They might be ever so slightly frightening if they were real. What I want to try and tell you is that up here, I feel time passing through me, passing through the world in ways I never have before. It's always been event plus event plus event equals whatever. And don't get me wrong, I love events. I love putting on new outfits and waiting for what will happen, but I'm not sorry about being here now. The sky sings, and the river keeps flowing toward a waterfall that's about another mile away, and That's what happens. That's all that happens. I've got nothing to do but watch it and listen to it. I've never felt like this before. Like time itself is the only event, and I'm here with it, and it doesn't really make me happy. I don't mean it doesn't make me happy. It makes the whole idea of happiness feel sort of sweet and small, like a toy. This is something else. This is a feeling I don't know the name for, and I have the good sense not to try and come up with a name for it. Here ends today's entry, written in a composition notebook produced by the Mead Company, made somewhere in India, purchased from the Staples in Union Square, and conveyed to this place, which must be almost as surprising to the notebook as it is to me. I remain yours. I remain mine. I remain watchful and largely unimaginary. Robert Q. Walker. P.S. I'm hoping that once I get home, you and I can invent a name for this. Or more like we can spend some time trying to come up with a name for it, even if it takes us the rest of our lives.
Oh.
Wow, I could listen to you all night. Oh my gosh, you just go back.
No problem there. Wow, thank you.
So, hi.
Hey. I think we want this to be at least, spontaneous without being just entirely random. And I was thinking, just to open things up a bit, that we could talk about literature and the struggle to write something worth the paper it's printed on, and to sort of take words and slit the skin of mortality itself and try to see what's on the other side. Or we could talk about the movies.
Yeah, well, you and I, although it is spontaneous, we have some similarities. We both went to the same graduate school. We found ourselves in the middle of the country. We have, as we were talking about, films. Mine forthcoming, yours great and in the past. And we could talk about that experience too. But I actually have a question I just want to ask you, even if everybody wasn't here. You went to graduate school at 26, I went at 27, so we were basically the same age. How has your relationship with your writing or your writing ritual or your feelings about your writing changed since then, and how has it evolved over the years, because you have so much great work under your belt?
Thank you. I'm not sure how much difference going to an MFA program makes. It's something, but I think it sort of pales beside the experience of just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing until it begins to be sort of less bad. And well, I know we've had sort of, we've been on slightly parallel courses though at very different times. I came here right after Iowa. Did you? Or anyway? Okay. Anyway, but we've both been fellows here.
I have not. Oh, who should I talk to about that?
Well, that doesn't change things really.
I don't think I ever applied though.
Well, I felt like the MFA, the Iowa Writers Workshop, where we both went, was kind of rough. It was, it was competitive and could be very mean-spirited. And I think what maybe made the biggest difference to me, besides just writing a sentence and then another sentence and then another sentence, was being invited to be part of the community here. For anyone who doesn't know, the Fine Arts Work Center, I think uniquely on the planet, offers residencies to fiction writers, poets, and visual artists without any requirement that you have published or shown any work at all. And that's usually the sort of catch-22. Like to get supported, you have to have already gotten to a certain point. And that's not the case here. And I think, especially after the sort of Shark Tank of Iowa, feeling a part of these, how many of us were there, like 16 people, all of us engaged in all of us agreed that this was worth doing. All of us agreed that nobody's gonna like everybody's work, but all of us agreed that we had the right to do our work. And I came out of here with a different sense of determination, a different sense that I had a right to try and do this, and a sense of a community of other young artists who I could call at midnight. And that sense of accompaniment I got from being here, I think was probably the thing that made the biggest difference for me. What about you going to graduate school? What was it like for you? And how have things changed for you over time?
Yeah, I had so much, just oceans of free time and wasted oceans of writing time. And I, just in the past few years, have experienced a few really important ego deaths. One of them being I have a 3-year-old child right now. And, my wife and I practice as close as we can, equal parenting, so there'd be times when I'd be up at 5 a.m. with our daughter. It'd be winter, it would be dark, and then my mother might come over at 7, and then I would have 2 hours to write before heading to the general store to have a meeting, and that sort of, that pressure, that tightness, really helped my writing life. It created, the first I guess we would call it like wisdom I had about my own writing practice was that my feelings about my writing were irrelevant. They were irrelevant. There's something, I think I grew up, my dad is a landscape painter. We have paintings in my house from my relative who's a Hudson River School painter. Everybody in my family's been artists for a very long time. And I always saw my dad go to work go down to a studio 10 hours a day. But I still have this sense that I think a lot of people do when they participate in the arts, that it should be something that you really love, that it's a hobby, that it's an extracurricular. I still do love writing, and I think writing should be fundamentally joyful as an act of creation. I really don't, I bristle against that attitude in the writing community that this is so hard, why are we doing it, I hate this. Well, just do something else, I don't know. Nobody's asking for another novel. I fundamentally love writing, I love the act of creating. As I said before, the line between a memory and a thought and a dream and writing a scene of fiction is so thin that when I'm down in my dad's old painting studio, which was my great-grandfather's old woodshed, with a cup of coffee at 7 a.m., no cell phone, no internet, and I enter that dream space that feels like I'm creating active memories or entering a dream that I had. But you get to, it's like, what is that dream called where you control it? Lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming,
really,
yeah.
and that's not hyperbolic. I really feel like it's lucid dreaming that, and I'm sure you felt this, that it's moving so fast through you that your fingers can't keep up on the keyboard. I never experienced that when I was a younger writer. I never did. Sometimes I think, oh, it's a great idea. Why isn't the New Yorker calling? But that forge, that like hot creative core that you only get through sitting through hours, through not caring about your own feelings about the writing, is something I treasure and hold really dear now. That only came through drilling down into the source of whatever, the dreams, the subconscious, the years of experience, the terrible heartbreak that I had, the having a child, the getting married, all the events of my life sweeping through me. I really treasure that about writing and being a more experienced writer.
Does it seem safe to say it's like anything that helps you feel less like an asshole? For one, just quickly, I teach a writing class to undergraduates, and but at our first meeting, I said, we're going to go around, and I want each of us to talk, because it's an advanced undergraduate class. These kids have all written something already. I want each of us to talk about what are our challenges, what are we here hoping to work on, and this is what kills them. Now I want each of us to talk about something we think we're good at. Whoa. And people just go blank on that one. It feels so, because you feel that, you don't get over this after you're 19, but you certainly, and I think you feel like I'm not a writer. I'm a hack. I'm a drunk. I'm a whatever I am, but I'm not a writer. But I insist. I said no. Let's start right now with you, all of us, starting to feel like we can. We're not hacks or poseurs. This may or may not turn out the way we hope it will, but you're doing it because you think you can do it, and let's just admit that and move on.
Because I don't want too much time to get away, can you tell me what it was like to see your book on the screen, and also what it was like visiting set?
Well, that was one of the reasons I brought up the question of the movies, because you have a movie. Would you tell people about your movie, just like what's going on?
Sure, yeah. The History of Sound, the title story, has been adapted by me. I wrote the screenplay for it, and it filmed this past spring. It should be out next year with Josh O'Connor, Paul Mescal, Chris Cooper, and a bunch of others. Really wonderful actors, and I got to visit set a few times. They didn't take me to Rome or the Lake District. Anybody, it's so strange because writing a book is such an incredibly solitary experience, not in a bad way. It's just nobody can walk through that valley but you. You're the only one doing it. And when you're writing a screenplay, you also have this really specific relationship with the director, depending on who the director is or how much they want you to participate. And you're right here, and then shooting starts, and you go from this level of importance to this level of importance almost overnight. And it can be a really startling experience. But it's just a shift in, it's like the eye goes from the writing to the actors, and why I'm so interested in what you, in your experience is because it was again, I think this is the most accurate word I can think of when I went on set, a hallucinatory experience to walk in and see. I mean, if I just did, it's a different story, but if just say you like walked out this room, because movie sets are, they're not in the actual places, they're made up, and all of a sudden you were in the Harvard Peabody Museum and you saw those people looking at the wall of glass flowers from the story, it's actually startling. And what I was just talking about, that line between a memory and a thought, a scene of fiction and a dream, it sort of mixes those really quickly. And I found it actually startling to see people not only say the words, but they have it all there. Yeah.
And I know you've just seen the director's cut, right?
Yeah, I saw the director's cut 2 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't get to talk to a lot of people about this. The experience of seeing your characters, your story, realized by somebody, transformed that way. Here are these actors. Here is this vision that you hope corresponds in some ways to yours, but it's also not yours. It's somebody else's now. So yeah, surreal. Can we talk a little more about just the sheer pure emotions of seeing this thing that has been utterly private suddenly made that public?
Yeah, I'm sure the Germans have like a 3-inch word for this. There was this thing that happened. I remember when I walked in the first day, and you see, first of all, just profound embarrassment when you see all hundreds of, film sets are hundreds of people, and you're like, oh my God, I made them all come here. And then walking in, and there's all these layers of, you're allowed past certain layers, and then there's the video village, and then there's the, you go in deeper and deeper until you're at the core of where it's being filmed. And I was looking at the monitor, and there was a scene of the two characters who are in the bar, and where they meet in the south end of Boston. And in the story, they're talking to each other, but in the scene, a background actor walks by, and Josh O'Connor's character paused and just turned his head to look at the creaking floorboards of the man walking by, and all of a sudden it felt like that moment in The Wizard of Oz or something when it goes from black and white to color. That everything was different. It wasn't even that the director or whatever. It's like it became real life, and it had that like magic dust to it, and it felt startling. Just those little moments. Yeah, so I eventually loved it, but it was, like an inversion.
Yeah. It's surreal.
Yes.
Did
you have any of those moments on set, or moments that you felt that diverged from your vision?
It was seeing the actual finished movie that was the most cathartic. That was the largest experience. It was great to get to meet the actors and watch them shoot, but then suddenly here it is. It's done, and it is again yours and not yours anymore. The first time I couldn't even tell if it was good or bad.
It's good.
Yeah, but it wasn't. So it wasn't necessarily apparent at first, and all I can think is it was a little like these people you knew had died and been reincarnated as someone else, as actors. So you recognize them, but you recognize them in this sort of intuitive, bodily way. You would recognize the reincarnated version of someone you've loved.
That's so beautiful. Should we open up to audience questions? I feel like I can't ask a question after you just said that.
No, I'd love to talk to everybody.
Anybody have questions, concerns?
We have a mic.
Reading day, it felt like in a way it was in conversation with the hours, but in sort of a reverse scale, that as opposed to 3 lifetimes, we're doing 3 days. And I just wondered if that was an intentional echo, and if so, what the meaning was, or I'm just hallucinating it for my own amusement.
Yes and no. If you do this for long enough, you begin to see certain patterns emerge that you hadn't quite expected. And one of mine seems to be a certain tendency toward the triptych. But you know, you don't want that to be your shtick. And so the day is, the hour is in 3 parts because it was three interconnected stories. Day is in 3 parts because I felt like I had to write a novel that acknowledged is way too mild a word, the pandemic, but was not about the pandemic. And so there is a before, a during, and what I will call an after. But that was really just sort of in each case, those were the forms that the storytelling seemed to want to take. And I think I probably better not write another anytime too soon. But you're right. You're right that, you know, once there's 5 or 6 or 7 books, you yourself begin to realize that you tell stories in a certain way, that you use language in a certain way, that you have concerns that emerge over and over again. But you if you're lucky enough, you live long enough and sort of to understand what kind of writer you actually are, because you don't know yet.
Thank you. This is so engaging, and we could be here all weekend.
So do we.
But Ben, you made an interesting comment. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on, and then perhaps Michael, you could also give your thoughts and feelings about it. Ben, you said that your feelings about your writing don't matter, and I wonder if you could both speak to that.
Well, maybe I should be more specific. My feelings about creating writing, about the act of writing, if I paid attention to how I felt about it, I would never do it. I would have a nice cup of coffee, and then I would take my dog for a long walk, and then I would float in the ocean, and then I would talk to my friends. And so when I started feeling, when I knew that that was not the way to get writing done, if I didn't pay attention to often when I'm writing, I don't know, maybe you don't feel like this, but often while I'm writing, I think, God, this is terrible. What am I doing? Like, I stick by what I said. I think writing as a whole should be a joyful act, but the feeling of putting, I mean, what is, I have a whole other life in painting and oil realism painting, and it's like when you paint, you have the colors out there, and you have a palette, and it's physical, and you go on a surface. But like, what is your palette while you're writing? It's like it's vapors, it's thoughts, it's there's nothing. You're trying to pull this thread out, and that act of like sort of maybe like spinning wool or something can be a painful, difficult act. And if I paid attention too much to my feelings about that act, then I would never get any writing done. So I just sort of, maybe it's like a meditation practice, just acknowledge my feelings about how this isn't floating in the ocean on a summer day, that it is hard to do, but that it doesn't matter. And that I will, if I just keep going, if I keep like pulling that yarn out, I will arrive at a point that I've become addicted to. Just that feeling of creating scenes, feeling of being with characters. When you just said, you know, your characters died and they're resurrected, when you're writing a book, it really feels like you're living with the characters. They feel like memories to me. They feel living, and I'm absolutely addicted to that feeling. So that was really important. But when I was saying to Michael, when I was 27 at graduate school, it was like, I don't feel like writing, so I shouldn't. You know, that changed a lot. But I also, my feelings about my writing, if I felt badly about the finished product, then I wouldn't publish it. Yeah, I feel good about my final stories, yeah.
When I was in graduate school, which was not all strife and darkness, it was mostly strife and darkness. I got the best advice I've ever gotten from one of my teachers who pulled me aside. This was just for me, not for any of the other students. And she said, when you finish a story, here is what I want you to do. I want you to go back over it and give every line a grade of either A or B. Let's just say there's no C's, but the really scintillating ones get A's, and the ones that seem, you know, okay, get B's. And then I want you to rewrite all the A sentences, because those are the show-offy ones. Those are the ones that are about your talent and not in service to the story. And honey, the story is not really about your ability to write it. It's about itself. And I have kept that in mind ever since.
That's great.
Thank you both. I just have to ask Ben, because we're in Cape Cod. I grew up in Lexington and Concord, so is Thoreau just having a moment? And thank you for your book. I sort of feel like the pandemic brought Thoreau back a little bit.
Wow, is he having a moment?
Well, there was another book that was like a memoir of like the pandemic through Thoreau. I can't remember the name of it.
Wow. Well, I would say this when I was, and that was almost, I call it like an accidental book, because I was working on fiction for so long, and then I took these walks and wrote down sentences, which became paragraphs, which became pages, and so on. But I will say something, because I resisted Thoreau so much. I mean, I think giving high school kids civil disobedience is a great disservice to the Transcendentalists. And I just hated his writing. It felt academic and old-fashioned and sometimes like openly misogynistic, and it's very hard to crack into Thoreau. This is coming, the other shoe's about to drop. This is coming from somebody who like deeply loves Thoreau now. And that's because I started reading his journals when he wasn't writing to be published and writing in a cultural context. He was just writing for himself. And he died so young, he was 44 when he died. You realize it's just a 30-something-year-old interacting in one of the most, whatever happened in his life, his natural intelligence, his relationship with his sisters, his parents, he became, all his experiences sanded down this like glass to become this lens that he was, and wherever he turned, like pure beauty just filtered through. And his journals show that the most. I mean, it was, for a long time, Andy Dillard, I was like, why would you ever write a book about nature when Andy Dillard's out there? And then I realized why Andy Dillard loves Thoreau, why so many authors love Thoreau. And I think, and this is say why I think he probably has a moment, is Thoreau, like so many other philosophers, religious figures, from east to west, north to south, wherever, it's not that his ideas are old-fashioned, it's his ideas are timeless. And they just show up. You can almost see it like this wave cycle showing up, that people drift away from what's important, what makes them feel connected to themselves and the universe. And then they come back when somebody phrases it in a certain way. And the Transcendentalists nailed it. And I think they captured that, what I'm talking about, that focus, that like where we turned and the light filtering through, they illuminated and focused something that people, maybe if he is having a moment, are really thirsting for. I mean, I said this at another talking twirl, so sorry for repeating this, but it's kind of an important point about the transcendentalist, is that through experiences in nature, the transcendentalists believed they would, one of the elements would receive transmissions from the divine. And I think what people realize, and what I try to illuminate in my book, is that when you have experiences in nature, you don't necessarily have to feel like it's a transmission from the divine, but it does feel like a transmission about the earth itself, or the condition of being a human and experiencing the world as an emotional being. And so those themes, they're so prevalent right now because of name any number of things that disconnect us from that right now.
I think we have time for maybe one more. Yeah, because Ben and I will be here all night, but I think they have other places to go. Yeah.
Okay, this is so great. Thank you so much, Work Center. Thank you so much, you guys. Michael, this is Jenny. I wanted to ask you about the Hours, the opera, because I remember back when we were both reading the Hermione Lee biography. You were writing about Wolf. I was just wanting to read the biography, and we talked about it. And then I was really afraid of reading the Hours, because what if I didn't like it? And of course, I loved it. And I avoided the opera for a long time, because I was like, I love opera so much, I'm such an opera queen. Contemporary opera is so difficult, because it's a form that's so old, and how do you bring it into, the time, how do you bring it into now? Anyway, finally saw it this year with my partner, and it just devastated me. The things that I didn't remember from the novel came up, the emotionality of it was off the charts. And it was so beautiful, and I wanted to ask you, how did you trust, how did you trust the team to translate it? How did you feel about it? Because it's to make a contemporary opera classic is very difficult.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I found with both the movie and the opera, the only question was, do I feel good enough about the vision and talent of the people who want to do it to just say, yes, go. I don't want a faithful adaptation. I don't want to see the same story I wrote just being sung. I want to see what other artists will do with it. That's the fun of it. It was true in the Hours. What those actors, I have to tell one very quick one. There was a scene in which Virginia Woolf, played by Nicole Kidman, sort of kisses her sister, Vanessa, played by Miranda Richardson, just goodbye. And this was not in the script, but Nicole grabs Miranda's face and just plants this vampiric kiss on her. And Miranda fell back and would not do another take. But we got the one. Just by way of illustrating what other people can bring to something you might not have imagined on your own. I went to see the opera on opening night along with everybody else. I hadn't really had anything at all to do with it. And when you're writing a novel, I think we all there are days when you think, this is pretty good. And there are days where you think, oh God, this is just terrible. I'm doing this. And you may, if you're a certain kind of person, think, well, maybe this will sell some copies. Maybe this will get into a movie. I was never grandiose enough to think, maybe this will be a sold-out opera, and opera. That one I just had not dared to imagine. Again, it's a complicated experience seeing something transformed like that, but I think maybe maybe the quintessence of it was it wasn't all my dialogue. It was about half and half. But there was a moment when there's a line I not only recognized, but remembered writing a long time ago, thinking, I can do better with this, but I'll get back to it, and never did. And then Renee Fleming is singing it on stage. That kind of sums it up.
I'm going to come invite everybody to give Ben Shattuck and Michael. Please come back frequently and often.
Yeah, quickly. I hope everyone knows how much it means. I can't speak for Ben. How much it means to me just to see the people who read the books. It's such an abstract act. It's like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it into the ocean, and whether you read reviews or not, it really completes a picture to actually be in a room with people, whether even if they haven't read my book, but you're here and you read books, and it could be when you think of all the possibilities on television alone. And it's just such a powerful reminder of the fact that a book is an experience shared by writers and readers, and thank you for being writers and readers.
They'll both be in the back if you want to get your book signed in just a few minutes. Thank you.